What's up, everybody? Welcome to Dharma Time. I am your host, the Dharma Guy, as always, with my lovely, co-host here.
Lovely?
The what? My lovely?
Lovely?
Yes. Well, I was thinking Vanna White, which I don't even know if half the people watching are going to know who that is, but
Trini, I need to go throw the trash out.
yes, I'm aware of that.
Hold on, you take care of the business. Hold on.
Nothing but the best preparation here for you guys on Dharma Time. You know, we take these things seriously. We're nothing but professional for you guys, and we put the utmost preparation and energy and time into these shows to bring you the best quality that we can possibly give you. And yeah, that's all complete bullshit. We're doing the best we can. As you can tell, he apparently had to take the trash out. So I'll go ahead and put our stuff up there so we know what we're doing. As always, we're here at WPSN99.com. Some of you guys are watching live via Facebook. Some of you guys are watching this recorded via YouTube, or you're listening to one of the many different podcast platforms. We thank you for your time and your energy. Make sure you follow us on social media. I'm at the Dharma Guy. He's not here at the moment, but he's at the Dope Doctor. We are at WPSN99, and then, of course, in the background on his blank screen at the moment, you can see we are at Now Matters More. And what we do with Now Matters More is we help individuals struggling with the disease of addiction. So if you or anybody you know is struggling in that area, you need some help, you need pointed in the right direction, whatever it may be, you can check us out at nowmattersmore.org. Through that website, you can hit that little donate button, you can fill out applications, you can read about who we are. And then, of course, as always, you can call 833-NOW-MATTERS, 833-NOW-MATTERS. I'm laughing because I can also hear his dog barking in the background.
He was helping me.
I was just telling them that we are the utmost serious professionals, and we are we're dedicated to the quality of everything that we do.
Yes, sir.
And as everybody can see it, yes, he's very adamant in making sure everybody is aware, if you're not watching this, that is not a mullet that he is rocking at the moment.
Oh.
He wants everybody to know that it's not a mullet.
Look at this, Trinity. This is what we're going to cut at the Hopathon.
I see that.
Shave it all off at the Hopathon.
Well, speaking of Hopathon, before we get into today's topic, let's go ahead and talk about that. Matter of fact, I'll put let me put that little thing up here for everybody. There it is. Oh, wait a minute. Why is it not working? There we go. Bam. Right there, right in front of our faces. The Hopathon. That's the old flyer, so I apologize ahead of time. However, it has all the pertinent information. That is the Hopathon. So everybody can go to thehopathon.com, thehopathon.com, and that's going to be September 26th for 24 hours, starting at midnight. Now, is it starting at midnight the morning of the 26th, or midnight essentially the morning of the 27th? Let's clarify that.
The morning of the 26th. It's all 26.
Okay. So
we just got a new person that just added to the roster, man.
Well, let me explain it first.
Okay, go for it.
And then we'll talk into all the good stuff. So, for those of you who didn't watch last week or don't follow us on social media or whatnot, you should. But so we're doing a Hopathon. The Dope Doctor over here wanted a telethon for years. He finally conned somebody into doing it, and we're all on board. We all support it, and we're going to do a telethon, a streamathon, and it's going to be called the Hopathon because we're trying to provide hope for individuals struggling with addiction. So it's 24 hours of hope. We're going to have all sorts of entertainment, and I think he's getting ready to notify me of a new entertainer that we have. But
yeah,
multiple different speakers. We're going to have comedians. Hopefully, we're going to have poet. We're going to have music. If you could think of it, we'll most likely have it on there.
There's an artist.
There's an artist. So we're just trying to entertain everybody for 24 hours, and within that 24 hours, we're obviously trying to raise money as well as awareness for the cause. So be sure to go to thehopathon.com to get more information. Once again, you can also follow us on social media, and you'll get more information as well. So without further ado, by all means, who has recently agreed to come on board?
All right, so I'm here, after throwing the trash and interrupting your show in the morning.
It's our show, man. It's our show.
I know, but when I interrupted, I apologize to you, Master Sensei, or whatever wow. A Buddhist monk. So anyway, I'm kidding. But Yeah, our good friend Jason Waller from the Hills just texted me
Oh,
right
right
when
on.
uh, right when I got back to my computer. I saw Jason Waller says that he's in on the
Right on.
Hope Hunt.
Very cool. Very cool.
They're filming a new season of the Hills right now. I think it's the Hills Revisited or something like that right now, right? Or I don't know.
I,
Uh, but
I'd be
uh,
lying
but
if I
but
told you I knew.
but it's like the Hills, like continued or something. Now that
Right.
anyway, what's up, Ben? How you doing? Ben saying
Very
hi on
cool.
Facebook Live
Hey,
for those
hey,
of you
what's
that
up,
don't know
man?
that live on Facebook Live. But
Yeah.
yeah, Waller from the Hills will be on, and he does a podcast out there in LA as well when he's not filming the Hills. Well, he does it at the same time, I guess. But
Sure.
he's in recovery. I mean, his recovery is known by everybody. Whatever they saw on TMZ, he's awesome.
Yeah. Right on. I think it's gonna be good, man. And at the same time, I think we're doing a walk. Our normal yearly walk that we have, Namat is more. I think is taking a much more of a leadership role in that, and
Yep.
so it's going to look good, man. It's going to be an interesting 24 hours. I think everybody should tune in and check it out, and mash that donate button while they're watching, by all means.
Mash. Oh boy,
That's right,
mash it.
man. That's right. All right, so today's topic, man. Uh,
What's
Gosh,
up?
man.
What are we gonna talk about besides my continued fascination with friggin' Snickers?
Yeah, and your mullet. Yeah, I don't know, man. So I'm trying to do my hardest, man. I'm doing my best to avoid directly talking about all this craziness that we're all experiencing at the moment, and I'm finding it harder and harder to do just because it is right. It's affecting everybody in some form or fashion, be it directly, indirectly. Maybe it's starting arguments with friends and family. Maybe it's starting arguments on social media. Who knows? Um, so I'm going to cover a topic today that is somewhat related, but I'm gonna try to make it relate to just general life as opposed to specifically these events, because I
Hmm.
don't want to get caught up in all this stuff and he said, she said, and all these different things. I would rather stick with some spiritual undertones here and talk about just things that can make our all of our lives on a day to day basis just a little bit more enjoyable or more skillful, right?
Right.
And so, the thing that made me that I've been noticing a lot of watching all these different things that are happening, in addition to just in my own life and dealing with my kids and whatnot, just lessons that I see myself continuously teaching them. Um, the word fault comes to mind, right?
Mm.
Like whose fault is what?
It
That's
ain't
such
mine.
a
That's all I know.
well, it's such a big, it's like a heavy topic, right? Like fault. We all act like it isn't, but yet we're like we often find ourselves in finger pointing matches, right? Even the
Right.
best of us who try to not live that way, like I myself like to consider myself somebody who's not really that concerned with faults on a day-to-day basis, especially in my inner relationships.
Right.
For me, I'm usually more concerned with what's happening and what a solution could be. I'm not concerned necessarily usually on who did what to cause. Like at that point, it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
Like there's been times where my wife and I, early on in our relationship, where we would get into things, and she'd be like, "Oh, it's not my fault." I don't care whose fault it is. It doesn't matter. Like this is where we're at. How do we fix it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm seeing so many things right now talking about whose fault is this and what's justified and everything else. And so I figured we should talk about that today. I figured we
Okay.
should address, indirectly the big pink elephant in the room. Um, so fault, right? Like what is fault, right? So in theory, at the most base level, I'm gonna give my interpretation, and feel free to chime in. Obviously, my interpretation of when we start saying fault is basically your opinion or your actions didn't line up to what my expectations were. That's what I hear when I hear fault. Unless, of course, it's like a car accident or something, and somebody ran a red light or whatever, they're at fault. I don't mean in a legal sense. I just mean how we typically address them. Um, that's the most loose definition I can give, right? Like I'm sure there's multiple variations or multiple definitions of it, but too many times when I hear fault, it's because hey, this person's behavior or actions or whatever it was didn't line up to what I thought that they should do, and it's usually followed by, uh, you know, that being used as some sort of a justification to do whatever it is I'm about to do, right? You were at fault. You did something I didn't like, so now I'm going to retaliate by saying or doing this, and then kind of just it starts to get out of hand from that point. Um, and that's what I see a lot of, right? And I see a lot of like And the funny thing about fault is it's not universal, right? It's subjective, depending on what side you're on, depending on what perspective you have, depending on how you measure things, will depend on who you deem at fault. And that's why I don't like it, is because there's very rare occasions is it universal. Is that a definition you can get behind, or do you want to add to that?
No, I'll definitely get behind that. I mean, I usually would just go to the latter part of what you said. I just said my behavior is justified because I didn't start this. So at the most simplest level, that's kind of where I just sit it. It's just, whatever I do from here forward is completely justified because you're at fault. And that's just me not disagreeing, just me not agreeing.
Right.
So whatever I do not agree with, whether it's an expectation or whether it's an end result, I mean, regardless of what it is, I think just as long as I don't agree with it, and I don't like it, that's enough to make you at fault.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine walking around like that all the time. But knowing that you're walking around, it's different doing it. Like, there's a lot of people walking around like that all day long.
Yeah.
But imagine knowing that that's the way you're walking around and parading it as a virtue, because that is the way
Yeah.
I used to do. I used to parade it around like a virtue.
Agreed.
In other words, like I would say that, that you treat me like this, I'm gonna do it to you. I'm gonna do it to you harder. Or if I even know that you're gonna do something to me, then I'm gonna do you in advance before you can do it to me. So those used to be machismo messages of bravado and just justification in my own head. But it somehow made me feel good. But it was all just insecurity in reality, because who cares what someone else does to you? If you're a nice person, you're nice regardless. If you're a respectful person, you're respectful regardless. It shouldn't depend on your behavior, Trinity. You could be an asshole to me, and I should still be respectful to you if I claim to be a respectful person.
Yeah, I think well, you say it all the time. Other people don't have to be respectful for you to show respect.
Amen.
There's another thing I've put out there before, saying that other people don't have to change for you to find inner peace, right? But I agree, and I don't think it's just a machismo thing. I think it absolutely can be referred to as that. But I've seen plenty of women do the same, right? And we seem to be in
machismo. Whoa! This is 2020. Women act machismo too.
Okay.
Machismo is not owned by men. No,
Okay.
Don't Gillette me, Mr. Woke.
I'm just saying, machismo is macho and whatever. But who cares?
I
don't give a shit how we define it.
There's a lot of women that are más macho.
I don't give a shit how we define it. I'm just saying, the bottom line is, I see men and women seem to be kind of almost, like you said, valuing that, right? Like, it seems to be this thing out there now that we all want to sign off on, where it's like, well, they did this, I do this, right? It reminds me of my children. It reminds me of kids who don't know anybody.
Any children.
My son or my daughter will do something, whatever it be. I don't know. Something insignificant and small. And then my other one will immediately respond to that with something equal to or greater than what caused it.
Right.
One will say something snarky to the other, and then the other one will just say something horribly mean or hit them or whatever. And then when I go to them, I'm like, why did you do that? Well, they said this. I was like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, you're in control of your actions. And so I think so many of us haven't grown out of that. I know grown adults who still feel that way. And I did until I met spirituality and I started to kind of come to my senses a little bit. I was that guy, right? I was that tit for tat, like you hit me, I'm gonna hit you harder. Right. You made me do this. If you wouldn't act this way, then I wouldn't do this. Like, all this cause and effect stuff.
Right.
But essentially, what I was saying, then, if you look at it from that perspective, I'm not in control of anything. Basically, everybody and everything around me controls me. I'm just this big dumb robot or this big dumb bull that's just running around, and everybody's dictating to me how I'm going to behave that day.
Yeah,
that's not cool. I don't want to think that way.
No, you're walking around like I'm no one to be messed with. Or here's the plain sentence: don't start no mess, there won't be no mess. And so you're walking around like everyone needs to respect you. Like, well, you don't know how important I am, clearly, and I am so important that You have to drive how I want you to drive. You have to walk where I want you to walk and how I want you to walk. You should talk to me how I want you to talk to me. Damn it, God, put the temperature that I choose you to put instead of you putting whatever
Exactly.
temperature you think you should be able to do.
Yeah.
And television, why don't you play what you're supposed to play? As a matter of fact, movies, when I watch you, why don't you have the ending that you're supposed to have rather
Yeah.
than that I want you to have instead of the
Yeah.
ending that you choose to have? I mean, it just grows on and on and on,
Yeah.
Trinity.
Yeah. Well, and that's the two-sided thing, right? Is this expectation that I'm super important and that everything should be my
Right.
way,
That's
but then
right.
also the lack of control to where I don't really make decisions. I just
Right.
react. And so,
Right.
you
Yeah.
dictate to me how I'm going to be today.
Yep.
So, I didn't for me, both of those perspectives, believe it or not, is what I actually spirituality helped me learn, right? So, right off the bat, because control was always an issue of mine, I didn't want to feel like I was being controlled by anything. So when I had to stop and think, well, wait a minute, why am I allowing these people to control my mood? Why?
Right.
Hold up, like, yeah, and I don't remember what age that happened, but I used to wear it as a badge of honor until I realized like
Right.
the fact of it. I'm like, hold up. So you're telling me I'm weak?
Right.
That's why I'm
Right.
letting these people decide? No, that's not going to happen anymore. So now I pride myself on, no matter what you do, say, think, or feel, I'm going to choose my response. I'm not going to react. I'm going to decide for myself how I choose to respond to these things. And then the second part is, yes, this idea that the world should go the way I think it should go, right? And that's actually the first part of the Four Noble Truths. That's one of the first things that you learn in this particular spirituality, and that is life is full of suck. Right?
Yeah. Right.
There's always, every day, going to be something that takes place that you don't agree with. And there's different ends of the spectrum, obviously, right? There's oh no, my favorite show is canceled, to, oh my gosh, my car got stolen. Like, there's a spectrum here, but every single day, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when something's going to take place that you don't like.
Right.
And so I don't think people get that, bro. Like, I think on a conscious level we get it, but when you look at our behavior, we obviously don't get it. Because so much of what I see right now in the world stems from that very notion that I'm not always going to get my way.
Yeah.
Not everybody shares my perspective. And I don't even know what... perspective is just... We've done a whole show on perspective. I encourage everybody to go look it up. We could probably do another 10 shows on perspective, and they'll still not scratch the surface of how important and how intertwined our data is, because so many things do revolve back to just not being able to see it from another's perspective and understand that our perspective, while it means something to us, is not the truth, right? It's our truth. I
think we can make an argument that every show that we do is on perspective, to be honest with you.
Yeah, pretty much, man. But when it comes down to the fault thing, I have such a problem with that, because where does it end, right? Because somebody does something unknowingly, unbeknownst to them, they upset you or offend you in some sort of way. Then you knowingly choose to react to that using their behavior as your justification. Well, they didn't know that they upset you at first. All they know now is you're just treating them poorly. So now they're going to say, well, you treated me that way, so I'm going to give it back to you. And then you're going to say, oh, really? You're going to... Oh, that's how you're going to react? Okay, well, I'm going to give you more. And it just goes back and forth until somebody dies, right? Like, that's the end. You're just going to continue to keep one-upping one another until something catastrophic happens. And then at the end of the day, to use the old cliches, nobody wins, right? Because even if you think that you won, you're probably going to cause a lot of damage on the way to that supposed victory. And then when you look back, you'll be like, whoa, all that stuff happened all because I couldn't just let it go. Right? And I think that that's the idea that I would love to get across today is, stop using other people's unskillfulness as justification for your shitty behavior. Right? At the end of the day, that's what we're talking. I'm not talking about the great behavior that you do. No. Let's get it straight here. We're talking about the crappy behavior that you do that hurts yourself or hurts those around you or is destructive, and you justify it by using somebody else's actions. That's what we're talking about today. And we see it everywhere. And I'm tired of it.
Does it have to be crappy behavior for us to talk about it? Because,
No.
I mean, what if just any behavior?
Yeah, any behavior.
Because I think as soon as we say crappy behavior, I think there's a lot of individuals that, because they feel that their behavior is justified, they won't even they don't even classify it as crappy. As a matter of fact, I guarantee you that somebody listening to this or watching this, immediately when they think of an incident, they can't help themselves but think of, but wait a minute, this situation is unique. Now, I get that for most things, but for this situation, this is what, you know what I mean? In other words,
well, let's address that. I want to address that, right? Because you and I were
right.
talking about that earlier in the phone. I don't have a problem. Well, I obviously have a problem with the behavior, but I have more respect for the person that can at least admit, hey, yes, it's wrong. I know it's wrong, but I'm still doing it because I'm unskillful or whatever. It sucks, but I can at least respect that outlook. I can't respect the outlook for somebody who can't even admit what their behavior they're doing is poor behavior, right? To use the most extreme example that I can think of, you and I were talking about earlier, if I were to walk in on something happening, like somebody was abusing one of my children or my wife or somebody, the right thing to do is to stop the altercation, get the police involved, and let the system work its way out. That is the right thing to do. I don't know if I'm personally skillful enough to handle it the right way. I'm most likely going to physically harm that individual who's trying to hurt my family. But I'm not going to say that's the right thing to do. That's going to feel good. That's my instinct. But that's not the right thing. That's not the socially accepted right thing to do that we're, the laws and things that we have in place. The right thing to do is to remove my family from a threat, call the police, get them to come in and handle it in the legal system, and let whatever happens. Now, I'll be the first to admit I'm probably not going to be skillful enough to do that in most situations, but I'm not going to try to convince myself that because I'm going to do it, it's the right thing to do. And I think that's what I think we do need to have some sort of set of, this is a standard, this is the expectation. Because too many people do feel justified in things and don't understand that whether you feel justified or not, it's still a poor behavior. It's still,
Right.
You're still hurting somebody. You're still being mean. You're still being aggressive. You're still being nasty. Now, we can put into context all day long and talk about your feelings and how you felt justified, but you have to still be willing to admit the facts of the matter, and that is you didn't handle it well.
Mm-hmm.
There was a better way of handling it. And I think that and it's hard, right? Because there's so many emotions, and there's so many things on TV and movies and everything else that to tell us, we're doing the right thing, right? Like using that example, there isn't a movie out there that's not going to, a movie or a story or any blog or any comment section that's going to tell you that if you walked in on somebody like hurting your child, that you're not completely justified in whooping that person's ass. Everybody's going to be like, yeah, hands down. But in all reality, the law disagrees with you.
Right.
And the law says the right thing to do is remove them from the threat and get the police involved and let the authorities handle it. Anything other than that is not correct. It's not the right way of handling it. No matter how good it feels, and no matter how many people you can have to justify it. And so, some would call that your moral compass, I guess. Which I'll admit, mine's been broken for years. That's why I got a wife. But I can admit that. Right? I'm fully aware that I know that I'm not always going to handle things the best. And if I don't, I'm at least wise enough to look back and be honest with myself and take a true inventory and say, look, did I do that the best way? If I didn't, no matter how much I felt like I was right, I could still apologize or I could still address it. And I see you turn your hat around so you're getting serious now.
No, I was just inquieto. No, the whole situation with right, something being right. Again, that's a show that we've done, and we touch on that all the time on Dharma Time, whether something's right or not. In this case, when I'm thinking about fault, that's the pocket we try to sit in. We try to sit in the pocket of right. Like somehow, whatever I did is justified or allowed because I'm on the right side of right now. I'm on the right side of history. I'm on the right side. And I think that in itself is a problem because it's, like you said earlier, it's very subjective. We're very biased. Now, I think one of the hardest things I think that we have as human beings is so many people are not admitting their biasness. I think we're so accustomed to hanging around certain people, our circle, and those within our orbit and within our closest circle. They give us all this kind of justification with a lot of the ways that we think, but that doesn't make you right. And even if the majority says it is, it still doesn't make it right. And I'm going to go even further. Even just because it's against the law or for the law or within law doesn't make it right. So if we're going to talk philosophically and we're going to talk spiritually, we have to understand that in reality, none of us really know. You can only behave as good as your heart is allowing you to do, but you got to keep it, in a loving way. In other words, if you're coming out of love with whatever you do, then pretty much you're going to do a lot of the right things. You're going to say the right things, and if not, there's only so far off course you're probably going to get. But if you're coming out of hate and you're coming out of revenge and you're coming out of all those things, like what Simon says that we make movies about this stuff. You drew first blood, things like that. Then your behavior then is going to follow along, and you're probably going to hurt people, and you're not hurting them because you're right and they're wrong. You're just hurting them. Let's just stop the sentence right there. It doesn't require but, remember anything after but, all that kind of stuff. It's if you want to truly not be at fault, then good luck. We're human. You're going to be at fault a lot.
Yeah.
You're going to be wrong a lot. And the key, Trinity, is us all admitting there's sometimes I'm going to be wrong, and maybe I'm wrong right this very second. I could be wrong right now, and I could be at fault right now. However, the reason I don't like saying I'm at fault for your thought process is because you have to take responsibility for the way you're interpreting what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And that's your responsibility. So even though I want to take the fault, doesn't mean you should let me take it, because you in then turn should say, you know what, maybe, but I also am at fault, and then you accept your part of the responsibility and of the equation. And if you're not able to do that in a conversation, then it's not going to go anywhere. Now you just like conflict for the sake of conflict. And as my family knows, I love to stir the pot sometimes. Sure. So I'll sit there and I'll stir. You want a little conflict? Let's get into it, because I kind of like it a little bit. I kind of like confrontation.
I don't mind conflict.
So it doesn't bother me. However, at least I know that and I understand that, and that is the key. But there's some really individual actors out there where they know what they're doing and they still do it, and I'm talking in a very serious way. That is a little disturbing. So even though you said you can respect that if they can admit it, I think it's really hard to know that there's individuals out there that absolutely know that there's another way of viewing this, and they choose to manipulate the situation to then manipulate others. And then now that's getting into a whole different situation. So one thing is in relationships and at your place of business and in your home, but the other thing is to just rile stuff up on a major level and on a larger scale, and that's a whole different fault.
Well, you actually reminded me of a quote that I just brought up real quick that I've had in my little my notes section for, gosh, I don't know how many years now. And the dog is excited about it too.
He likes what you're saying.
And it says, in a controversy, the instant we feel anger, we have already ceased striving for the truth and have begun striving for ourselves. And that's true, right? Because at the end of the day, if the truth is what matters, it doesn't matter what the truth is. That's what matters, And what you kind of started what you started your talk there on is.
Keep talking to me. Close the window.
All right. Well, what everybody else, essentially what he was talking about is as far as this philosophy is concerned, the Buddhist philosophy would be the second part of the Eightfold Path, and that's right intent. And right intention, I typically break down in very simplistic terms by saying you got to stop doing certain things and start doing other things, right? So the things you got to stop doing is you got to stop coming from a place of anger and rage and greed and lust and all these other things. And you got to start coming from love, compassion, kindness, generosity, those kinds of things. And if we're honest with ourselves, I think a lot of the times we're not coming from love and compassion and generosity and kindness. Even though we want to convince others that we are, or even convince ourselves that we are, if we really stop and think all those little nasty, snarky words that we say, the passive aggressiveness, the whatever it is, more often than not, it's because something irritated us inside. Something touched our button, right? Our button wasn't small enough. Something touched our button, and maybe I don't want to like hit you or shoot you or anything crazy, but I want you to know that you touched my button. So now I'm going to say something in hopes of touching your button, just so I feel vindicated and knowing you know how it feels and you're aware that you touched my button, and that is not the right intention, right? The right intent is to come from love and compassion. So if somebody Like, if somebody touches my button, it's my job to understand that, first of all, it's not their job to not touch my button. It's my job to make my button smaller. Secondly, I have to understand that more than likely, they just unknowingly touch my button.
Yeah.
Most people, on the average everyday individual, is not waking up, setting out to go touch your button today.
Right.
That's not typically how it goes down. They're just going on with their day. They have their own buttons and their own things that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And you just so happen to walk in front of them, and boom, they touch your button. It is what it is. But we have to come from that perspective. We have to come from this loving perspective of, you know what? You touch my button, and it's okay. You know, I don't know. You know, it's my job to maybe interpret that differently so it doesn't touch it. And if you, in theory, were purposely touching my button, then I've got to say to myself, come from a perspective of, holy cow, what are you going through right now that's making you feel that you need to lash out to everybody? I can't imagine what's happening in your day that you're saying to yourself that I need to lash out and touch people's buttons and start pissing people off.
Right.
And in that moment, you don't need more things to piss you off. You need somebody just to be compassionate and be like, look, man, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm sorry. You know what I mean? What can I help? You know, you're obviously struggling right now. You're obviously suffering because you're just lashing out. And you know what? I'm sorry for that. If I can help, I will. But the one thing I can do is not add to it. And that is the right perspective, right? That is, well, there you go. So apparently we're both getting interruptions today. My phone was just going off. I don't know if you couldn't hear my phone or not. But
we didn't hear it.
Oh, well, I did. Anyways, so what I was just explaining when you stepped out for a second, where the dog was chiming in his 2 cents, was
The
just
FedEx,
essentially,
man.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure I'll have some. My wife loves the order, so. No, the just coming from the right intention. That's the second part of the Eightfold Path. You know, and I think you're right. It's kind of what it boils down to, man. This whole fault thing. A lot of it does boil down to we have to come from a place of right intention.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it. I'm not gonna lie. Absolutely.
Wow.
There's been times where somebody will say something to me and they piss me off, and I'm not the type of individual these days to just haul off and punch them in the mouth or something. There's just something crazy. But I'll do some passive aggressive shit though. I'll make a little comment, or I'll, in a moment where you're vulnerable, I might, throw a little jab in there just to remind you. And that's something I got to work on, right? And, part of me doesn't want to work on it because I think it's fun sometimes, but the other part of me realizes that if I'm doing hurt to somebody, then I absolutely have to work on that, and I think that's why I've gotten better. But I can admit that, right? Like I can admit that I'm not justified and it's not a right thing to do, and I need to get better at that. I don't walk around saying, "Well, I'm fine. I don't care. Y'all need to just get over it," because
I'm just being real.
Yeah. The thing that people, and God, dude, I've said this so many times to so many people, it's only fun when you're on the winning team. I can't stress that enough. Like, right now I'm seeing a lot of footage of groups of people attacking other groups of people, right? And in those particular instances, I'm not going to say, right or left, because they're both doing it. But in these small little microcosms, that particular situation's only fun because you're on the winning team. Right? Like my buddy Terrence used to tell me, and I don't know if he made it up or not, but he says it's not fun when the rabbit has the gun. And it's true, right? And so that's what I encourage people. When you start to draw these lines and you start to feel so justified, ask yourself, if you were on the other side, would you feel the same? You probably wouldn't. And so
because I think that's what we just saw. We saw the rabbit with the gun. I think that's what we just saw. But okay, go ahead.
I'm not even going to touch that one.
I know you're not. That's exactly, and it wasn't fun. So you could chase someone down, you could throw something at it, you could shoot at them, but you forgot they have a gun too, and then it got ugly. And so, I know you're saying it like metaphorically, but everybody knows the reality of what we're dealing with. So we could try to sidestep it and not speak specifics, and we don't need to get into specifics. But the reality is that that's exactly what's happening right now. We are all not as a group, and I say when we all as a group, we are not being respectful of one another enough.
No.
And so it's hard to have a global discussion of love and compassion and respect and fault if we're not being love and compassionate and respectful. It's hard to get to the fault part. You know what I mean? Because Trinity, what we haven't discussed is how far back do we go with fault? Because I don't know about your situation in your home, but I could literally, me and Dana, and I feel like I have something real justified I could say now because, man, she's at fault right now. So I say it. But then she'll bring up something I did like years ago that has nothing to do with right now, but for some reason makes it okay for the behavior she just did.
Yeah,
So
I think
she'll
that's
say, yeah,
just
but you
married.
did this. And I'll say, well, we're not talking about 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But then she'll say, oh, because we're not talking about you. And it's like, wait.
Yeah.
So
my wife's got a few of those in her back pocket. Yeah, I
my
know.
point is that there has to be a historical end to fall. Because if we're going to go all the way back, then we're just going to go all the way back to Adam and Eve and like, who ate the apple here? I mean, how far do we go back? No, I'm serious.
Sure.
Like, how far do we go back? In other words, there has to be some sort of cleansing. Like, here, I'll give you an example, Trinity. If I accept you for being you and say I forgive you and say that we're good, then we just got to be okay and good. And we got to be able to move forward from that. We got to, I don't know what the hell that was, but I'm glad you saw it too. I'm glad you saw it because if not, I was the only one that saw it. But what I'm saying is we have to have a stop and start. Because without a stop and start, which is not realistic, I get it, because we can't help ourselves but have memory. We can't help ourselves but have this is because of this. This is because of this. But we're only going to be able to get so far before our memories are going to be slacking. And even then we're going to have to go by written or video. Like, look at that video, Dana. Look, this is 1994 video. But even that is today's perspective on a past video of 1994 of whatever. And then we don't have all the context. So now it's out of context. So there is no way to go far. There's no way to go far and be honest to ourselves right now. So the only thing we can do right now is create a cleansing period, whatever that is. So if you're in a relationship and there's a lot of conflict, then you need to create a day of cleansing. Or like in the law enforcement, how when the RICO Act came to be what it is, it was, okay, queen for a day status. Tell me of all the crimes that you've done, we're going to call it a clean slate, and then we'll move forward from here. Right. If we can do it with a criminal such as like Sammy the Bull Gravano, if we can forgive an individual to that kind of extreme that has killed over 10 people, admittedly, and allow that person to walk free, then how is it that I have to hear about something I did 20 years ago that upset her? You follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
So we have to figure that little piece out so that we can all be a little bit more peaceful.
Yeah. Well, and along those same lines, we talked about it earlier in the show, and that is, the first truth.
Correct.
Right. The first truth, and that is, man, all right, so I've been talking spirituality and teaching this type of stuff for, I don't even know how many years now. And I could spend so much time on just the first truth alone. And that is, pain is a part of life, right? Mm-hmm. Because it is so paramount. It's the foundation of which everything else is built on. And it's such a simple concept, man. But we have such a hard time wrapping our heads around that and applying it every day, right? And what I mean by the first truth, for those of you who aren't aware, pain is a part of life. And in more layman's terms, essentially, explaining it out, what I mean is every single one of us understand that going through life, things are going to happen that we don't like, right? No matter what it might be. In other words, if somebody were to sit down with you and say, hey, I think my life should be awesome and perfect and nobody should ever do anything or hurt my feelings or say no to me or whatever it might be, you would look at that person like they're crazy. You'd be like, that's insane. That's never going to happen. You're foolish for even thinking that, whatever. Like, amongst many other things people would say to that person, right? But each and every single one of us, what's the first thing we do when our expectations aren't met, or when we think something should go a certain way and it doesn't? We get upset. We get frustrated. We get like, why is this happening? So on one hand, we absolutely know that it's just impossible to do. It's the equivalent of me telling you to go out there and pick up your car above your head. You most likely wouldn't even try it because you know it's not even possible. But imagine thinking it's possible and going out there and trying to do it all day long and getting upset. That's what we do every day by thinking today's going to be the day that nothing doesn't go my way. Right. So we have to stop this idea that we have this magical scepter, that we're this royalty that can wave this wand and nothing's going to go bad. No, man. Like, things are gonna happen. It is what it is. People are have their own way of doing things, their own perspectives, their own demons that they're battling with, and they're gonna cross paths with you. And sometimes it's not gonna work out in your favor. It's not a personal attack. They didn't do it on purpose. They don't. They didn't wake up that morning and say, "Today at 3:30, I'm gonna come across your path and I'm gonna whatever." No, man. We're all doing our best and we're all failing miserably, right? We're all trying to learn from one another and get through this thing. And what makes it easier is giving people that little bit of leeway and understanding. You know what? If they cross my path and they touch my button, they're probably struggling with something. You know, because I've touched other people's buttons and I didn't mean to, right? So, like, I think a lot of that builds off of that. And for some reason, it's like we expect this weird kind of perfection from everybody in the entire world, but we're not real willing to realize that we're also imperfect, right? Like, it's what is that thing? We're like everybody else's judge, but we're our own best lawyers, right? We judge you by your actions, not your intent, that kind of stuff. Well, these cliches have been around for a reason, man. They're true, right? Like, I've seen it happen, like in like I knew about this stuff, but to me, my best schooling, if you will, is just my kids. I get to see what's intrinsic and what's learned. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen my son and my daughter, right? They're about the same age, so they're essentially twins. They're what they call them, Irish twins. They're like, like 18 months apart or something. So I've seen, like, my son. My son's a boy, and he is, like, rough, man. Like, I shit you not, he broke a mag light the other day. For those of you who don't know, a mag light is a flashlight that's essentially just a rod of steel with a bulb at the end. Like,
you can hit somebody over the head and not break it.
People have been hit over the head. I've seen trucks run over them, and they're still working. My son managed to break one the other day. I'm kind of impressed, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah,
but
got to reward.
Huh?
Got to reward him.
Yeah. So anyway, so my son is rough, right? And so he'll just bulldoze his way into things sometimes, unaware how he's impacting others. And one time, or many times, I've seen him. He'll accidentally bump into my daughter Destiny. He'll bump into her, or whatever, and she will get irate. She would get so mad and turn around and start going off on him. And I'll be there watching the whole thing. I'll say, "Well, why are you getting so mad at him?" "Because he hit me." I was like, "Yeah, but baby, I saw him. It was an accident." "No, it isn't. He did it on purpose." I was like, but baby, he didn't. Like, I literally and it's so hard for me to convince her that he didn't do it on purpose. And I think that's like a microcosm of who we are. We walk through our days all day long thinking that it should just be this perfect day, nothing goes wrong. Somebody or something comes in between us, messes up our vision, and we think they did it on purpose, and now we're going to get mad. And it's your fault that I'm feeling this way. No, it's not, man. It's your fault. It's your expectations.
Well, I think the problem with that is we were already in that place, right? We were already unskillful in the stuff that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then you take a society, and when I say society, I don't mean just American society. I mean the world society. I mean, because the world really is all the same. Just because you live here doesn't mean this is the only one like this. I don't care what anyone in another country says or what you think about another country.
They're all struggling right now.
Every country is exactly the same. It's just a little tiny bit different. Anyway, so you take all these unskillful ways of dealing with what you said, and then you add to it that you feel, or I feel, when you do this upon me or say this upon me, that it was very predictable that you were going to do that, and it was preventable. So now that's additional anger and additional frustration, because if it was preventable, if I deem it to be preventable and it was predictable based on your past behavior, and if you would have listened to me before, or if you would have heard me or listened to me or felt what I was feeling before, then it wouldn't happen again. That's when we get additional frustration. So then fault is not just fault for what you did now, but it's like, look, this was coming because you were at fault then. You didn't take responsibility. So you did it again, and now you're at fault again. You didn't take responsibility. Now you're at fault again. So that gets to a point where then we blow up.
Yeah.
So if we blow up and we feel, but we blow up because things are pressurized. Sure. Because you didn't have the skill set enough to release that frustration in another way. Because, again, like what you said, your expectation was they're going to figure it out or they're going to get it. Well, that's not real world. Real world is most people don't get it. That's why history repeats itself. History repeats itself because as a people, we don't get it. we end up blaming a specific thing rather than a larger thing. And when we blame a specific thing, we just end up having another fight about another specific thing when really it's related to the
Yeah.
larger thing. And so it goes on and on and on and on. And what it really is just a big mush of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
If we understand that we're all biased and we're all hypocritical and we all believe right to be the side that we're on, and we all believe that truth is where we are coming from, well then how do we listen? Because the art of listening is lost. The art of understanding is lost. And to be honest with you, Trinity, I don't know if we ever had it, because if you read history,
exactly.
it was worse then.
Yeah.
So when I say lost, I don't mean lost like, oh man, the good old days when we had it, because we never had it.
Yeah.
You can go all the way to medieval period. You see the way people treated each other in the medieval period, right? And Billy the Kid was a 15-year-old kid with a gun killing people, right? And we put him on a pedestal up here. So there was. It is that we are human. We're trying to make ourselves as kind and compassionate as we can, but we're freaking animals, man. At the end of the day, we're animals and we're carnivorous, and it is a dog-eat-dog world. So I think we're struggling as a society trying to be a lot nicer and kinder than probably our instincts are allowing us to be. Sure. And that, to me, is the fight. Because success, a lot of times, the way we measure success as a society is so opposite than what we say we really want, the love and the compassion, because it appears that dog eat dog is rewarded. So if dog eat dog is rewarded and the world operates on money, not just the United States, the world operates on money, then so the key is to find that balance, right? The key is just to find that balance. There's enough of that's going to have to be tolerated by you, by me, by all of us. Sure. And then there's what am I going to give out? Well, there's a lot of that ugliness out there that I'm going to try to be some of the loving part. And I think that's really where our own inner peace comes into play. Because since this exists, instead of hating it and being like, oh, life sucks, FML, and all this stuff. No, it's really, as ugly as it is, that means that according to science, it's that equally beautiful. So it's just you want to focus and you put all your perspective on the ugly, whereas realistically, just put it on the pretty. And that's not being naive. That's just saying that's where my focus and energy is going to be.
I mean, I agree. And the thing is we've, there's certain things, certain qualities that we've developed as human beings over the years, and they're great at survival, right? That's what kept us alive as a species. Yeah. It's fantastic, but it's not good at making us happy. Right, and I think that's where we have to kind of discern between survivalness and happiness, right? Or what I always like to say is, you want to be right or you want to be happy.
Yep.
If you want to be right, then great, argue all those right things, and you trust me, you're never going to run out of things to argue about. But you're probably not going to be very happy because you're going to be exhausted, and there's always another right thing, right? And I want to touch on the scenario that you gave earlier, because it reminded me of something that I kind of, to be honest with you, I underestimated the impact, right? For me, it was just something I said one time. But, God, I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me, and that was one of the things that has stuck out most to them. So I'm going to repeat it here, so hopefully maybe there'll be somebody here who hasn't heard it, and it sticks out to them. And it comes down to learning how to accept and cope with these types of things, right? And that's the table versus chair thing. I said it on a whim one time. It was one of those things where I just came out of my mouth, and I had no idea how many people were going to latch onto that, right? And that is, if you go into a certain room or a certain setting every day, and there's a certain amount of tables and a certain amount of chairs, but you're just convinced that this entire room will be so much better if that table right there was actually a chair and not a table. And everybody else just sees it. They don't care. They're going through their day. But you just know that table should be a chair and this whole room would be different. And so you get mad and upset every single day. And every day you walk into this room, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, God, it irritates me because if that table was just a chair. And then you start to get mad and angry and you're like, oh, man, that table's doing it to me. No. That table's always been a table and it's always going to be a table. That table is being a table and has nothing to do with you in any way, shape, or form. It's just a table. You're the one that keeps expecting that table to be a chair. You're the ones placing these expectations, right? So, and how that relates to life is I've had so many people come to me and complain about somebody. And it turns out when you dig deeper, that person that they're complaining about has shown a behavior pattern for quite some time. And then they're getting mad at them. I'm like, well, hold up. So they've already established to you this is who they are, this is how they value, this is how they handle conflict or whatever it may be. And yet you're still getting upset at that same behavior. Now, I'm not saying that you allow somebody to treat you poorly or whatever, but at a certain point you have to say to yourself, am I expecting a table to be a chair? Am I expecting this person to just magically wake up one day and handle everything skillfully and know how to get through life and talk to me the way they're supposed to talk to me and do all these other things? Or am I expecting them to be who they've shown me to be? All right? And I think that right there is it's important to know, right? Because there's people I know in my life that will come to me and they'll be complaining and be like, oh gosh, this, you know what, here's the best example. This is actually, if I remember correctly, this is actually the very first time I used it. Somebody was in one of my classes one time, and it was a day on forgiveness. And this person was adamant that I was not going to make her forgive this person, right? And so she sat down, and she's telling me this laundry list of things that this person's done. And I'm talking like she stole things, she's lied about things, she's disrespectful, just this litany of things. And then as she's talking, she says one word that immediately triggered something in me. And she said this person was an alcoholic. And so I said, hold, let me stop you right there. So what you're telling me is you're upset at this person for being an alcoholic and behaving like an alcoholic. And you're taking it personal, like they're doing it to you. So what you're saying is this person is a perfect individual when they're not dealing with you. You're the only one, right? Well, no, they're doing... Okay, so who's the real culprit here? You for expecting an alcoholic to not behave like one? Or them for being exactly who you think they are? And I think that is where she kind of finally understood to let go of some of her resentments and realize you're dealing with a sick person that you're expecting to be well, right? And they're not going to behave well because they're sick. Well, the person you're dealing with is unskillful, man. They don't know how to handle conflict, or they don't know how to handle whatever. They don't know what's in your brain or what's in your mind and how you want things. And so you're constantly getting upset and mad at them. It makes you look ridiculous because you keep expecting them to be different than they were yesterday. And so stop expecting a table to be a chair. You know, that doesn't mean you can't work with it. That doesn't mean you can't rearrange it, but you got to know what you're dealing with. You can't expect it to be different than what it is. Just like we can't expect you to be different. You know, we're all on our own paths, and we have to meet people where they're at. You know, if I don't know if my mom is watching today or not, but the person I was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, was not who's sitting here. And it's not because I had a lack of people in my life telling me that I needed to do things differently, right? But I had to learn on my own pace. I had to get to where I was. People yelling at me and telling me how I'm bad and everything else was not going to do it. All it did was further entrench me in my thoughts. So all I'm saying is we have to learn how to manage our expectations and realize that you know, you can be right or you can be happy. And I think a lot of people right now are spending so much time trying to be right. And I have personally never witnessed anybody in the kind of arguments that I'm watching unfold be right. Not once. I've never been in a shouting match with somebody and either one of those two people say, oh my gosh, you're so right. I never looked at it that way and I'm so sorry. Never in the history of man have I personally ever witnessed that. So you're fighting a losing battle. That's not how you fight it. Go ahead. I got on my little soapbox there for a minute. Couldn't help it. Actually, we only got about 5 minutes left. So you want to do your wrap up here? The time flew today, man.
We still have like 6 minutes though. You want to do the wrap up now?
Well, I don't know how long your wrap up is because I just completely monopolized everything for the last like 7 minutes.
No, it doesn't matter, man.
We make the rules, so.
Yeah, exactly. There are no rules to it. So, right. No, I think you're right. I think, you know, besides expecting something to be different than what it is, I think when it comes to fault, it can go two different ways when it's not done correctly. One, everyone's at fault, so you just walk around pissed off at the world. Or the other one, everything is your fault, so you walk around like a martyr all the time and like you know, depressed. You know, balance really is the key. I mean, anytime we're talking about any of these subjects, I think I go back to balance because that's where my head sits. That's where I live. That's the place I like to be. That's why I say I like to get a 5 in a day. I achieve 5 in a day, and I'm good. I don't need a level 10. I don't need 10 days are fine sometimes. But
Yep.
if I get too many of those, or if I expect too many of those in the world, then I no longer like the level 5 days.
Yep.
And so since I want more happy days, yeah, Sunday, Monday, then I like the 5s, and I think the same is with this. Like when it comes to fault, I'm going to allow you to be at fault sometimes, and then sometimes I'm going to allow myself to be at fault sometimes, because sometimes it feels worthy. I think when it no longer is valuable, or when it's no longer worthy for the day to go in that direction, is when it starts harming people. And then when I mean harming people, I mean when you see that people are hurting, you see that they're crying, and you see that they're struggling. Then you have to ask yourself, why am I still doing this? What am I pushing here? Do I want the person to feel this way? Because sometimes you just need to shut up, man. I mean, really? Sometimes you just need to shut up. I saw a really cool post earlier today. It said, "Welcome September. Just sit down and shut up, and just sit in the corner and shut up." It was something like that. I don't know. I'm sure it was passed around Instagram everywhere. But I really like that, because sometimes we just need to just please just shut up, and we need a little quiet time. And I thought Mother Nature did that. I thought that's what Mother Nature did with COVID-19. I told you that when it happened, I said, Mother Nature put us all in timeout, or God put us in timeout, however you want. And just said, everybody just go to your room real quick, because you're all misbehaving. You're all just like misbehaving. So go to your room and be quiet. And we did that. And I think at the end of that, a lot of people just did not deal with that well.
No.
Didn't deal with alone time well. Didn't deal with that isolation well. Didn't deal with their circle of influence well. And this is what I mean by that. What are people's circle of influence right now when you're locked up and locked down, and you're not going to school, and you're not going to work, and all you have is your home, and maybe you're not really getting along 100% with everybody that's in your home. You know where you're locked into? Internet and social media. And I think there's a lot of individuals that were so locked into other people's storytelling about their lives and their frustrations and their struggles, and you were having your personal life struggles, and so you latched onto someone else's ideology heavily, because it kind of sounded like yours, or maybe it is yours. But when you latch on real too heavy to it, and that's all you got, man, when you got released, you came out with a vengeance. And that's, I think, what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of young people that, isolated and alone, they wouldn't be behaving this boldly, this horribly, using the words that we're hearing being said towards other people without any proof, and just fault. You're so at fault that you deserve violence. You're so at fault that I am justified for my destruction of all that I find at fault. And that's the sad thing right now. The real sad thing is that I've been saying this for a long time, Trinity. We've been saying this for a long time. I'm not seeing compassion. I'm not seeing love. And so there's always, I can't remember a time in my life, and I tried to, Trinity. I really tried to remember a time and period of my life where we saw such destruction, but there was a side of love and compassion. I think that every time in my life, I've always seen a side of destruction. There's always been at least a side of love and compassion. I'm going to go back to the days of Woodstock. I was born in '69, out of the Woodstock era, right? And there was no violence at Woodstock. They were talking about peace. They were talking about love. They were talking about compassion. That has never, ever been replicated. I know so many of you think it is. I know so many of you think that, I would have been a great hippie. No, you wouldn't have. You're too violent. You're too hateful. You're too hurtful. You're too judgmental. Because they weren't, man. They just weren't. And I know so many of you look at the radicals in the 60s, and they did those tremendously brave and courageous things like Martin Luther King Jr. did. And you think, man, I would have walked with him and I would have been just, no, you weren't. You're nothing like him. Your mission is nothing like him. Your message is nothing like him. You don't belong with him. He's too good. And that's what I'm seeing, Trinity. I don't see the love and compassion side. So if I'm going to think fault, Trinity, all I'm going to say is everyone right now is at fault. Whereas on all parts of history, I can go back to the side that it was at least there's a love and compassion side. There was always at least one leader, one person that was just nothing but love and compassion. We have zero of that right now. Not one leader. Not one leader is about love and compassion. I don't give a shit what name you say. They're all sitting there in their group and they're defending whatever grouping they believe in. I'm sorry. That's just the reality of it. And so I'm waiting for that one individual to come up to just be loving. And I thought I had it the other day. And I'm not going to go all into it, but I thought we had it the other day when a person was speaking. And from the one person that this whole country has been saying, God, if that person would run for president, we'd all vote for that person. That is the most loving, saintly individual on the planet. And hate came out of that person's mouth. Attacking came out of that person's mouth. Name calling came out of that person's mouth. And I said, wow, now we've really gone to shit. Because now even that person is saying things that is hateful, hurtful, and not love, and not compassion, and not unifying. And that's exactly where we're at today, Serenity. We're at a place where even the most loving, compassionate people are no longer loving and compassionate. So we're all at fault. So look within yourself, find your fault, and if you want to change it, change it. But if you're pointing at other people thinking they're at fault and you're justified for saying the comments that you're saying, the name calling that you're doing, the bullying that you're doing, you're just as full of shit as they are. And that's it.
Message. Well, yeah, that was your wrap up, man, because that was good, man. I'm gonna do my best to try to follow that, actually. So as we get ready to start this wrap up, just once again, I want to thank everybody for watching, tuning in, listening, however it is you're getting this show. Make sure you guys, if you're watching through YouTube, hit that subscribe button, likes, things of that nature, because it actually does help, believe it or not. If you're listening or however you're doing it, share it with other people, get the word out. Hopefully they get some value to it. There's a lot of negativity being shared, so I'd like to see if we can start sharing some positivity or some just unique takes on things. But I digress. So let's talk about the wrap up here. I quickly jotted down three tips because at first I wasn't going to, but I felt the need to. So the three tips I have is first and foremost, when it comes to fault and blame, always remember, be it you're directing that blame at others or it's being directed towards you, fault is relative. There is no universal fault. It's relative. It's all about your perspective and how you value things and what you want and what your goals are and expectations and various things. So it's not this universal, sword of truth that you could just wield wherever you want. There is perspective. There is subjectivity to it, which leads me to my second tip, and that is, no matter what you figure fault is or who's at fault or whatever, it is not a justification for you to just do anything that you want to do. I think it was Richard who wrote in a chat here, 2 wrongs don't make a right. That's true, right? So no matter how justified you feel, it's not a justification. What is it? The eye for an eye leaves everybody blind, basically. So understanding that fault is subjective and understanding that just because you find somebody fault, that does not justify your poor behavior. Which leads me to the third one, and to me I think it's the most important one. If something took place and you feel that somebody's truly at fault and it hurt you and it upset you and it wronged you, why would you ever want somebody else to feel that same thing? If it's truly that bad, the last thing you should do is want somebody else to feel it. You should want that person to see the light or whatever, but without experiencing that pain and that frustration and the horrible things that you went through to get to that point. And that's what I try to teach my kids. When I tell my kids when something happens, I say, look, if that upset you and that hurts you, why would you want to make them feel the same way? If this is another human being that you're supposed to care about, if you're talking that you're a compassionate person, well, the last thing a compassionate person wants is to put somebody through, pain, trauma, suffering, things of that nature. We should all go through this life and try not to add to somebody else's. I can't take away your suffering. Your relationship to your pain and how you suffer from it, that's yours. But what I can do is not add to your suffering. I don't want to be another source of suffering for you in your life. And I think that's the aim that we should all take. And if there's nothing else you could take from this, please take that away from it. So I think that's all we got for today. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Try to keep your heads up. Let's get through the day. Check out the Hopeathon, thehopeathon.com. It's coming up on September 26th. Check out the Couch Live coming this Friday from 12 to 1. I'm sure we'll have something fantastic there. And I think that's all I got for today. So we're going to end the show now and hang out a little bit afterwards and see what we talk about. In the meantime, now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.